Okay, so we're recording. Welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the BC Support Unit's inaugural webinar with our Scientific Director, Dr. Stirling, Bryan, and our Patient Engagement Lead, Colleen McGavin. Today's presentation is entitled Embracing Patient-Oriented Research. Are you ready, willing, and able? Our primary audience for this webinar is health researchers, although others such as patients, decision makers, and healthcare providers may be interested in the content. Dr. Bryan, our Scientific Director of the Support Unit, is also Director of the Centre for Clinical Epidemiology and Evaluation at the Vancouver Coastal Health Research Institute, or BCHRI, and he's Professor in the School of Population and Public Health at the University of British Columbia. He's an economist with a career-long specialization in the health field. And Colleen McGavin is the Patient Engagement Lead for the BC Support Unit. Colleen has experience as a cancer patient and family caregiver, and is a patient partner on health research teams, helping to shape the research to ensure it reflects problems that are of concern to patients and that measure outcomes that matter to patients. And on that note, I'll turn this over to Dr. Bryan, who will start the presentation, and he in turn will pass it over to Colleen, and then he'll conclude, and then we'll move to a question and answer section. So if you have questions, please hold until the end. We ask that you use the chat function up in the top right-hand area of your screen. You'll see a box that says chat. If you click that, you'll be able to send your question via text via your keyboard, and we'll repeat the question out for everybody to hear. Over to you, Dr. Bryan.
Great. Thank you very much, Pat, for the introductions, and thank you everyone who's joined for our inaugural webinar on Valentine's Day. So maybe we should have called this Falling in Love with Patient-Oriented Research. Are you ready, willing, and able? Great. So what we're going to do in this session is, first of all, provide an introduction to the strategy for patient-oriented research, and also describe exactly what we mean by patient-oriented research. So I'll be talking about the strategy, and Colleen will be covering the description of patient-oriented research. We're going to then present an overview of the support unit, so what is involved and who is involved, and what it can do for the research community as well as other stakeholder groups. And then we do want to have an opportunity for question and answer in this session, so we will have some time at the end, as Pat indicated. So please save your questions to the end, and we want to have some dialogue about the unit and how the unit can support the work that you're doing. So to start with, Canada's strategy for patient-oriented research is a CIHR initiative. Sorry, I've got a fire truck in front of me. It's a CIHR strategic initiative that's looking to ensure that the right patient receives the right intervention at the right time by increasing the research that we do with and by our research knowledge users. And those include patients and families, as well as more traditional knowledge users of health research, healthcare providers, and health system decision makers. So what is patient-oriented research, or what more precisely is not patient-oriented research? So I've been involved over many years in what's been described as outcomes research, research that uses patient-reported outcome measures, or even patient-reported experience measures, and does research using data of that sort, where patients directly report themselves on the health status they are experiencing, or upon their experience with an interaction with the healthcare system. And even shared decision-making research, where patients are clearly very directly involved in thinking about the treatment options that they may go forward with. Now, all of these sorts of research have the potential to be patient-oriented, but in themselves, they are not necessarily patient-oriented. So we need to be clear about what we mean by patient-oriented research, which, of course, is the focus for the strategy and the focus for the BC Support Unit. So what we mean by patient-oriented research is research that engages patients as partners in the research enterprise. So patients obviously are subjects in clinical and health services research, but now we're talking about patients not just as subjects, but as partners in the research enterprise. And we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by that. It's research that focuses on priorities that are identified by those people who are experiencing the condition or using the service in question. So it's about the agenda that's being explored or addressed through the research that we take forward. It's conducted by multidisciplinary teams with relevant stakeholders. So patient-oriented research by definition is a team sport, and it applies that knowledge that's generated to improve the healthcare system and improve the practice of healthcare. And so what patient-oriented research is an and to all of these things. So it's not an or, it's an and. We need patients as partners. We need to be looking at priorities that are identified by patients with relevant stakeholders and applying that knowledge to improve the healthcare system. So it's a new partnership, if you like, in Canadian health research, and a partnership that involves patients centrally with the research community, as well as care providers and healthcare system decision makers. And so we see the knowledge users. Traditionally, we've thought about knowledge users as health system decision makers and as the care providers, but we're also now being encouraged to think about patients as knowledge users too. And that may be in the context, for example, of shared decision making, where clearly, in order to engage fully in a shared decision making process, then the evidence for the options that are being presented needs to be communicated effectively to patients. Or we may think about self-management, where patients are clearly being encouraged and given the opportunity to be involved in managing the care themselves. They'll also want and need to be able to understand the evidence relating to the care that they're taking forward themselves. So we wanted to give you an example of a patient-oriented research, and if you like, a bit of an exemplar of patient-oriented research. And this was a piece of work that was led by Dr. Linda Lee. So Linda is a colleague of ours here at the support unit. She's the lead for the unit's methods cluster in knowledge translation and implementation science. And Linda has got a track record of taking forward truly patient-oriented research. And so we wanted to highlight, just as an example, work that had been taken forward. And this is the ANSWER project. So ANSWER is an acronym that stands for an animated, self-serve, web-based research tool. And this is in the context of rheumatoid arthritis. And so what the project did was to look at supporting patients with rheumatoid arthritis in making a decision about whether to go forward with a particular drug therapy, that being methotrexate. And the team members involved in this work, as an indication of its true patient orientation, it was multidisciplinary. So there were clinical and health service research colleagues, social and information scientists, people with knowledge translation skills, and also graphic design. So a truly multidisciplinary team. And it also involved the arthritis community. So patients were directly engaged as partners in this research, and they were drawn from the Canadian Arthritis Patient Alliance and the Arthritis Society. So they developed an interactive web-based decision support tool, and this is just a screenshot of what that tool, or some of the graphics involved in that tool, to support the decision-making by patients around whether to take forward drug therapy with methotrexate or not. And this research had a usability testing piece. So there was work that was done and has been published separately about the development of the tool and the testing of the usability of this instrument. and also had an effectiveness stage where the proof of concept was explored and in fact taken forward beyond this paper in the context of a clinical trial. So just to sort of point out how ANSWER as a project was truly patient-oriented, we've got 5 sort of aspects of the research that point strongly to the patient orientation in this work. So patients were partners in co-identifying the need for the research. So the agenda that was being explored, the question was influenced by and directed in part by patient partners. The actual instrument that was developed, the beta version of the instrument, was co-built by patient partners, and then patients clearly participated in the usability testing, and then the subsequent refinement of the tool. It was an iterative process in order to listen to what patients were saying as the tool was developed, and then trying to respond to that with improvements. Patients participated in the clinical trial to test the effectiveness, and then patient research partners, the patient advisory group, all participated in dissemination activities. So it was a truly integrated knowledge translation process, leading to the development of an effective and truly meaningful patient decision aid, which patients with rheumatoid arthritis are now using in making decisions about whether to go forward with this particular drug therapy or not. So we just use this as an example to give you an indication about the focus of the work that's being done as part of the strategy and within the support unit. And at that point, I'll pass over to my colleague, Colleen McGavin.
I'm just going to share my screen here so that I can carry on with the slides. All right, I think we're ready to go. Hi, everyone. So what I'd like to do is talk about why patient engagement is viewed as being important, and then I'll move on to explain what exactly we mean by patient engagement. What does that look like within the context of health research? So the first reason why we might want to involve patients and the public in health research really has a moral argument, which says that people have a right to be involved in publicly funded endeavors that affect them personally. So there's 2 aspects to that. It's publicly funded, but also that it affects them personally. The second bullet speaks to the fact that there's a recognition that much of the knowledge that's produced by research never actually makes it into policy and practice. So it's kind of related to the first argument, really. And to a great extent, this is what the SPOR initiative is all about, actually, increasing the impact of research. So there's strong emphasis within SPOR on research that impacts care, so that as Stirling pointed out earlier, the right patient receives the right intervention at the right time. And this is something that evidently doesn't happen often enough. I've heard statistics that up to 50% of the time, patients don't get treatments that are proven to be effective, and it's simply because the care providers don't know about these treatments. And actually about 25% of the time, patients can get treatments that may actually be harmful. And again, it's because the care providers don't know. The third bullet speaks to a little bit to what Stirling was alluding to before. So it speaks to whether the research is relevant and whether it addresses issues and outcomes that matter to patients. So in other words, does it address the needs, values, preferences, and risk tolerances of patients? And will it lead to care that's truly patient-centered? So what are the important questions to ask? What are the important outcomes to measure, and so on? Next, we have the what's called the quality argument. And it says that if you include people with lived experience, these individuals can improve the research. It can result in better questions, easier recruitment of study subjects. It can make researchers better communicators. so that the results of their research can be better understood by the knowledge users. And the last bullet really speaks to the impact that patient engagement has had on both the patient partners and the research partners. There's quite a lot published about how this has been an incredibly positive experience on many levels for both the patients and the researchers. So I'm going to move on here to talk about precisely what we mean by the term patient engagement, because it does have different meanings within different contexts. And when people hear it, they kind of layer on different meanings. This is the definition within the strategy for patient-oriented research. It's meaningful and active collaboration in governance, priority setting, conducting research, and or knowledge translation. And what I'd like to do is just break that down to have a closer look at what almost each word means within that definition. So first, the phrase meaningful and active, and you know, we ask ourselves, well, what does that mean? And I think this is a good quote that describes it from a patient partner. It's the feeling that you're having an impact, that your voice and perspective matter and can influence decisions. So here we're talking not about care decisions, but we're talking about decisions related to the research project itself. SPOR has developed a patient engagement framework with 4 guiding principles: inclusiveness, support, mutual respect, and co-build. And I think to a large extent, all of these speak to setting up an environment where patients can be meaningfully and actively involved. The next word in the definition is collaboration. And some of you may be familiar with this spectrum of engagement. The words here, inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower, describe this spectrum. And as you move from left to right on that spectrum, you're seeing an increased impact on decisions. So wherever there are decisions to be made, you have to think about where you're going to bring people into that decision-making process. And as you can see, the definition of patient engagement within SPOR pegs it at the collaborate level, which is defined as partnering in each aspect of decision-making. So it's a pretty high level of engagement that we're working towards. I just want to acknowledge that this is something of a culture shift. And not everyone has to feel comfortable about jumping in at that level right from the get-go, but it is something that we're aspiring to. And then the definition goes on to list the sorts of areas where patients can be involved in health research. So the first is in governance. So here I'm looking or thinking about or talking about governance in its broadest sense. So not just engagement at the highest decision-making level, but here just defining it as all those voices that contribute to decision-making around policies, funding, and even operations within the context, again, of any research-related endeavor. In order to ensure that you have lots of voices feeding into that decision-making, what I'm trying to represent here is that you may not only be thinking in terms of that highest decision-making group, but also any other working groups or councils or perhaps ad hoc advisories that you bring into the process to ensure that you're getting that broad, diverse perspective on decision-making. There was a really good article that was published recently, and in it, patients themselves described the roles that they felt they had played in governance. And I like how they talked about their roles as free thinkers or creative outsiders and free challengers, individuals who come from the outside and aren't afraid to say the things that some people within the group, because of their professional associations or their allegiance to their employers or whatever, may not feel that they can say. Also the role of the passive presence. So in other words, just by virtue of having a patient partner at the table can sometimes, I've actually heard it said, change the entire conversation because of increasing the awareness that this really is about patients ultimately.
The definition then goes on to talk about patient engagement in priority setting. So here we're really talking about looking at what are the important questions to ask. And the question, it kind of begs the question of whose priorities have played in most in the past. I think we could arguably say that academic researchers have had a very large role to play in terms of setting priorities for research. More and more health system decision makers are wanting to have input to priority setting and wanting to have research address the priorities that their group faces. Healthcare providers also would have a lot to say about what they feel should be the priorities for research because of their role on the ground facing care decisions every day. But we're also talking about patient priorities, and there are a number of fairly rigorous methodologies that have been developed to help tease out priorities from patients, and at some point perhaps we'll do a webinar on priority setting and how that works. Now, I just wanted to give a case in point about patient priorities and why it is important to bring patients into the discussion. So this is from a report that was published by Chalmers and Glasgow in 2009, but it's based on an earlier study that was done by Talon et al. In about 2000. But they looked at patient priorities, so patients with osteoarthritis. And they said, if you could set the agenda for what you would like to see researched, what would it be? And patients responded that they would like more research into the areas of physiotherapy, surgery, and educational and coping strategies. But when they looked at where most of the money was being spent on research, they found that 80% of it was going towards drug evaluations. So it clearly showed that there was this disconnect between patient priorities and where the money was actually being spent, or the actual priorities of the research community. I do want to comment and say that I think that the arthritis group within Canada has done a lot to, I'm sure, to speak to this and change this picture. This particular example is just being used to illustrate how things can kind of get out of whack, or there can be disconnects. The last part of the definition talks about patient engagement in the conduct of research and knowledge translation. So I'd just like to break this down. So the illustration here, as you'll recognize, is looking at the various stages of a research project. And there was a very excellent, it wasn't even a published article, but just a document that I obtained from a woman named Isabella Zeleste, who's a research facilitator at the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan. And she developed this document that outlines roles for patients at all phases of a research life cycle. And I think the researchers in the audience might be particularly interested in this, because she lists literally dozens of ways that patients can get involved, but I just want to highlight a few. So in the design phase, patients can actually co-develop the patient recruitment strategy. They can review and comment on proposed questionnaires and data collection methods. In the development of the grant proposal, patients can define the outcome measures that are important to patients, which is a very important element of patient-oriented research. In the preparation for the execution of the study, patients can assist with writing patient information and consent forms. During the data collection phase, patients can conduct the peer interviews and focus groups themselves. When analyzing and interpreting data, patients can be consulted to determine if they understand and interpret data the same way as the research team. When it comes to disseminating the research results, patients can advise on different avenues. They can co-author manuscripts, newsletters, and other appropriate information outlets. They can jointly present the findings with researchers. With regard to implementation, patient involvement can increase the likelihood that results of research are implemented by adding a validity to the findings, and all throughout, patients can help with monitoring and evaluating the research process. We have the complete document with many more suggestions available through the support unit, so if researchers would like a copy of that, they can certainly contact me at the email at the end of this presentation. So I want to move on, because there are always, once people get intrigued by the idea of patient engagement and patient-oriented research, there are always lots of questions about, okay, how is it done? And really there are three major activities. The first is around recruitment. So where do you find patient partners and others willing to work with patients? That's one big question. So this is something that we can help with at the support unit. We have a very important relationship with Patient Voices Network here in BC that we can use to help find those patient partners, but we have other ideas as well. One very key part of this question of recruitment is to work carefully together to define what everyone's roles and responsibilities are going to be during the research process. So we work with researchers to help them to do that in order to ensure that we get the right patients on the team. The second big area of work is training. We hear again and again that there isn't adequate training, or there hasn't been up to this point, training that team members. And here, really I'm referring to everyone, the patients, the researchers, and then if you have other people, the healthcare providers, or maybe even health system decision makers as part of a team. How do you prepare everyone to work together? And I do want to mention that we are offering training through the support unit. So if you're interested in learning more about that, Stirling is going to tell you about how you can make inquiries about that. And finally, the big area of work is support. And this is a very broad umbrella term that really can speak to many things, but basically it's what kinds of ongoing mentorship and support are needed for all of the team members. So this could be everything from as trivial as, well, it's not trivial, but as day-to-day as just logistical support, scheduling meetings, helping people with travel reimbursement, to really other bigger things like how do you help to mentor and train people as they move through a project so that they feel comfortable and confident in their roles, or how do you deal with conflict within a team? That might be part of supporting it. Okay, I am going to now turn the presentation back over to Stirling, who's going to talk about how this was done within the context of the ANSWER project that he was talking about earlier.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Sorry, I was muted for a second. Great, thank you very much, Colleen. And so what I want to do is now bring us back and just reflect a little bit on the how it is done question in the context of the using the ANSWER project that was led by Dr. Linda Lee. So in that study, from the recruitment point of view, the study was, the concept for the study was developed and approved by Patient Advisory Board, the Arthritis Patient Advisory Board. All members of that board were then invited to be partners in the sense that the co-designing of the project was something that people could choose if they wished to be involved with. And then in terms of actually being members of the research team, then people on that advisory board were given the opportunity to self-identify as potential research team members. On the training side, there was in-person training, inpatient participation foundations. So the Arthritis Patient Advisory Board already has a training program. And so that was available to patient members of the research team. And it was supplemented then with ongoing mentoring through a buddy system. So it wasn't just a training opportunity, it was true engagement. And then training was provided by a combination of scientists as well as patient members of the advisory board. And then on the support side, so patient research partners and members of the research team who were patients were part of all research team meetings, and that was enabled both for in-person as well as remote access or virtual participation in meetings. And expenses and meals were covered as part of the research budget. Okay, so what I want now to do is move on and talk a little bit about the BC, or about support units and the BC support unit in particular, to address the question about what is the unit and what is available to the research community in BC as we emerge. So support is an acronym. So the word support is an acronym for the support of people and patient-oriented research and trials. So we're interested in a broad sort of definition of patients, if you like, that isn't necessarily a narrow definition, but includes people who are experiencing a condition in question, carers of such people, but also members of the community more broadly. And support units are multi-partner organizations with the target being to support, streamline, and increase the quantity of truly patient-oriented research. So as many of you will be aware, there are support units across the country. So most of the provinces have their own support units, the Maritimes being the exception, where there's a single support unit covering three provinces. And we've got multiple organizations that are engaged with the support units, so health authorities, universities, government, patients and carers, research institutes, etc. So we've got a wide range of organizations that are engaged with and part of the support unit. So in terms of the BC context and what it is that we're doing in British Columbia, so the BC support unit, the official launch of the unit was back in November last year, but we've been doing a lot of work obviously in advance of that. The mission for the support unit is to support the conduct and implementation of high quality patient-oriented research. So this is about doing patient-oriented research well, so supporting people who want to conduct high quality patient-oriented research, but also about knowledge translation and the implementation of high quality patient-oriented research evidence to inform policy and practice. So the goals of the BC support unit are, first of all, about building capacity to conduct and implement, again, high quality patient-oriented research, and to do that across the province, so in all regions of the province. So I'll talk to that a little bit about how we're looking to achieve that goal. So the first piece is about capacity building at a provincial level. Second is about increasing the quality as well as the impact of patient-oriented research, again, across BC. And then the third piece is about ensuring ongoing support. So once we've actually established some capacity and people are engaged in this work, how do we actually then have ongoing support for patient-oriented research, again, in all regions of the province? So what I wanted to do was just briefly talk a little bit about the key components of the support unit, of the BC support unit, and just highlight some of the work that we're doing as we begin to get the unit fully established and up and running. So first of all, to say that it's a distributed model. So this is in some ways quite different to some of the other support units. So we have a provincial hub that's based here in Vancouver, but then we also have regional centres in order to ensure that that we have a truly distributed model. And so for researchers who are based in outside of the Lower Mainland, or in one of the other health authorities other than Vancouver Coastal, then there is a regional centre for researchers and others to submit requests to. So the request will get submitted through the central website, which I'll show you in a second, but that will be initially addressed through staff who are based in the regional centres. And the provincial hub acts as the regional centre for the Vancouver area, covering Vancouver Coastal and Providence Healthcare. So we have, a big piece of the work we're doing is the data platform and services. Kim McGrail is probably someone who's known to many people who are on the call. So Kim McGrail is the BC Support Unit's lead for all things data. So she's taking forward work in order to support the developments of the data platform. This is the provincial data platform that is moving forward, as well as services relating to data that we're going to be offering. So you may have heard of the BC Data Scout as something that we are going to be launching, formally launching. It's been in a testing phase thus far. So that's an initiative that allows researchers and others to get a sense of the scale of a particular condition or problem in the province to understand whether, in fact, patient recruitment is going to be a challenge or is actually going to be possible for particular research exercises. So that was work that we took forward within the support unit and is an example of data-related service that we're rolling out very soon. Another example is REDCap, the database management software that will be available provincially as a support unit sponsored initiative. We have partner organizations, so we have a large number of organizations that we're partnering with formally, with signed agreements and work plans developed with our partners. And our partners range enormously in scale, scope, and sort of nature of service that is going to be available through partners. All of them are obviously engaged in taking forward in some way patient-oriented research. Some of them are very much on the data side and focused on, for example, taking the patient-centered measurement data, so the patient-reported experience measurement work that's been done in BC over many years, taking such data and making it available to the research community through the data platform and as in a linkable form. So that's work that is going forward as part of the support unit's activities. So we've got a large number of partner organizations. We're establishing methods clusters, and you may have seen recently that we had a call out for leads to put applications forward for methods clusters in health economics, data sciences, real-world clinical trials, and patient engagement. So we're getting to a point where we're hoping that we can announce the leadership of these new methods clusters very soon. We already have the first methods cluster up and running already, and as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Linda Lee is the lead for that methods cluster. So these are initiatives that are going forward as a way of creating what we describe as a community of methodology practice at a provincial level. So it's about exploring what works well in the methodology, so in knowledge translation, for example, what's working well in BC in the context of patient-oriented research, where are the challenges and what are the opportunities for us as a province to contribute to the development of methodology. But methodology obviously focused particularly on its application to patient-oriented research. We have demonstration projects. So there were 2 demonstration projects that were included in the business case that was submitted. So those are the only 2 that we've moved forward with at the moment. One is the Emergency Medicine Network that Jim Christensen is the PI on, and that's moving forward apace. And then the other is what was called the Permission to Contact project that Rob McMaster is the PI on. And again, we've moved forward in significant ways with both of those demonstration projects. In terms of the governance of the support units, we are governed by the board of the new Academic Health Science Network. BC's new Academic Health Science Network is the board that we report to. So that's providing governance, and we have advisory bodies. We have what we still describe as an interim governing council, but hopefully that will become not interim soon. And also a patient council, so actually having patients involved in both the governance and the direct advisory capacity is obviously a key piece of what we're taking forward. I should also just put a shout out to the networks, the chronic disease networks, not formally part of the support unit, but obviously as much of the, well, certainly sort of an important focus for our work is to support the chronic disease networks that CIHR has created. So, for example, within BC, we have leadership of the chronic kidney disease network, and so it's important that we have those networks as important users of the support unit services. This is just to give a sense of the sort of partnerships that we're creating. So this speaks to the work that Kim McGrail has taken forward as our data lead. So these are data-related partners, and we have a data advisory committee to review and consider all data-related aspects of our work. So we've got Ministry of Health, we've got BC Children's, Research Institute-based groups like CHAOS and C2E2, health authority-based groups like Island Health, as well as the CST, which is the Clinical and Systems Transformation Project within a number of health authorities. So this is our website. At the moment, we're in the process of further developing the website. But this is what it looks like at the moment. And the only thing I wanted to, obviously a place to go to find out what's happening within the support unit. One of the things I wanted just to highlight is that you can submit an inquiry to the unit. So we have tried to manage the workload just in the sort of first phase. And so we have thus far been supporting anyone who was applying to a CIHR competition that was particularly badged as a SPOR competition, a strategy for patient-oriented research competition. So we're close to the point where we're relaxing that and wanting then to offer services more generally to researchers who wish to go forward with research projects, but also to other stakeholder groups, including patients, would be able to submit requests for consideration of service provision. It is important that people understand that the work we're wanting to support is patient-oriented research, which is one of the reasons why we have that as a particular focus for this webinar. But the inquiry form is there. You can access it through clicking on that link on the website, and we've tried to keep it as simple as possible at this point. So it's not going to be too intimidating a form to complete, and we'll get back to everyone, obviously, who submits an inquiry through that route. So just about keeping in touch, questions you may have, please feel free to email myself, Colleen, and get more information from the website. You can sign up for we're now doing twice a month, we're going to have a newsletter. So the newsletter came out just last week, and you'll get email updates. You can sign up for that through the website, and we want to now close at that point in terms of the formal webinar and give an opportunity for any questions that folks have who are online. So I'm guessing I'm going back to you, Pat.
Yes, thanks, Stirling. I've unmuted everyone. If you have a question for Stirling or Colleen, you're welcome to ask it by voice or pose it via the chat function. You'll find the chat function in the top right-hand area of your WebEx screen. You just click the chat box and the chat function will open. One question that's come in, Stirling and Colleen. Has consideration been given to the inclusion of patients in ethical review of studies prior to approval?
So I'll start off if you like, Colleen, on that one. I think patient engagement in ethics review is I think that's a really interesting area for exploration and development. We're not working at the moment directly with the ethics boards at either health authorities or universities, but clearly we will be doing that as we move things forward. So at the moment, I would say it's a work in progress and not something that we've tackled explicitly. But I may be wrong because Colleen is our patient engagement lead. So please.
Well, Stirling can certainly speak for the support unit and whether we've tackled that as a support unit. But I just would like to say that I am aware of some organizations, and I don't want to name them in case I don't want to appear to be speaking for them, but I am aware of some organizations that are looking at this and moving forward with this, with recruiting and preparing patients to be part of ethics review boards. So it is a question that has come top of mind to some groups, yes.
Thanks, Stirling and Colleen. Are there other questions from our audience, either using the chat function or by voice? Another question that's come up through chat is, can you describe the relationship with the support unit and patient partners some more, please?
Sure, I'll take this one, Stirling. I think what the requester is asking is, what is the relationship between the support unit and Patient Voices Network? We have a working relationship with Patient Voices Network. For those of you who don't know, Patient Voices Network is an organization that is supported by the provincial government and part of the BC Patient Safety Quality Council. There is a volunteer network of over, I hope I'm getting the number right, but I think I'm safe in saying over 500 patients throughout the province, and these are people with lived experience of the healthcare system who have offered to lend their voice and their experience to various healthcare quality improvement initiatives. But we've been in conversations and working with this Patient Voices Network for over 2 years on the idea of also tapping into that resource to find patient partners for health research teams as well. The support unit has a seat on the Patient Voices Network Oversight and Advisory Committee, and this has been a wonderful boon because it's ensured that we have a platform to raise awareness about the importance of research and the relationship between research and quality care. So it's a very important relationship for us.
Thanks, Colleen. We have another question from an employee of a health authority who's also a patient and regrettably has spent a great deal of time in hospital due to hospital injury. That individual is asking how patients are connected with researchers. You may have already answered that, but perhaps you could speak a little bit more, Colleen.
Well, I think patients get connected with researchers in a whole variety of ways. Most often, I would suggest it's the researchers coming forward asking us to help them connect with patients. So it's going in that direction. It's researcher initiated. I would suggest that if there are individuals with lived experience, like patients who are interested in becoming involved in research, that you think about signing up as a volunteer with Patient Voices Network, because we post opportunities. We work with research teams on the development of what we call recruitment requests that describe what the opportunity is, what your role would be, all of the logistical elements about potential participation. And then those are posted through Patient Voices Network on their website, and you get regular notifications of these postings. So it's a really good way if you want to become aware of opportunities that are coming up.
Thanks, Colleen. Another question that's come up through chat is for Stirling. Stirling, would you be willing to describe how the BC Support Unit compares with the SPOR unit activities in other provinces?
Well, there's a good question. So, I mean, at its sort of fundamental heart, there's a requirement from CIHR that all support units have like some core elements. So, you know, we have the patient engagement core elements. We have the focus on clinical trials as a core element. So there are a number of sort of pieces that every support unit is expected to have, and so in that sense, there's some level of commonality across the support units across the country. But they've obviously, in different settings, decided to do things a little differently, and we've been given the discretion to do that. So every support unit put forward a business case to CIHR, and that was reviewed by an international panel. There were several sort of iterations of revisions to the business case before it was approved, and so there was the opportunity for things to look a little different. So I mean, you know, certainly I think we're doing things a bit different in BC. You know, nowhere else has, for example, the methods clusters as a component piece where there's I mean, there are methods delivery, methods sort of service delivery, if you like, pieces in all of the support units, but a particular focus on methodology development is an area where we're sort of doing something a little different, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity for us to support the, you know, not just the delivery of high quality research evidence, but actually to support the enhancements of research methods so that we can have stronger research methodology that's being applied in the context of patient-oriented research.
Great, thanks, Stirling. Before I move on, there's two more questions that have popped up in chat. And before I move on, I see people are leaving, and I just want to let the audience know that they can anticipate an email from the BC Support Unit using the email address used when you logged into this WebEx session with a survey link to solicit your opinions of what you've heard today and how the webinar went for you. We'll also be sending you a link for the recording so that you can share it with your colleagues, and we'll also be advising you of the next forthcoming webinar coming up February 28th by Colleen McGavin that is targeted more to patients. So there are two more questions that have come up, and Colleen, these are for you, and they're connected. The first question is, are there efforts to include the perspective of family caregivers? And the second question is, what are the best ways to recruit patients who may be underrepresented in a patient group? For example, those who are not as high functioning.
So the first one, family caregivers, the very definition of patient, so whenever we use it really at the support unit, encompasses the concept of informal caregivers such as family and friends. So certainly they are recognized as being very, very important within the context of patient-oriented research. The second question about the engagement of underrepresented populations is a huge one. This question often comes up when I'm presenting or talking to people about the work at the support unit. It's a very important topic. It's something that we know we need to do more around educating and assisting and supporting researchers to know how to engage with these underrepresented populations. By underrepresented, this could mean a more equitable gender balance. We know that we know that it could mean better age balance, more diversity in terms of culture. It could also speak to the populations that are vulnerable and marginalized, and we know that we have to do a lot more work around that. I'll leave it there because I hope to have more to say on this as we go forward with the support unit, because it's going to be a very important element of the patient engagement plan going forward for next year.
Great. Thanks, Colleen. Well, that concludes the list of questions that came in through chat. I'll just ask one more time if anyone has a question via voice.
I've been participating in my voice or something. I sign up on the network. So then
and hearing none, Larry, you're welcome to the presentation. Thank you very much, Stirling and Colleen, for your presentation today. I know that the audience appreciates you taking time out of your busy days to help bring them up to speed on what the BC Support Unit has on offer. So as I mentioned earlier, you will be receiving an email with a link for the survey and the link to the recording, and we would really appreciate it if you share the recording link with your colleagues. And on that note, we'll close, and thank you all very much for your attention today.
Great, thanks.
Bye.